Hi guys. Hi everyone. Welcome guys. I'm gonna wait one more minute just to make sure everyone is here. I'm not missing anyone. And then we're gonna start, and this is what we're painting today. So hopefully you all came prepared with either watercolor or acrylic. I'm gonna be using watercolor, but if you would prefer to use, if you don't have watercolor and you want to use watered down acrylic, you're more than welcome to use that as well. And of course, just make sure you have a pencil and an eraser, and we're gonna start in 1 minute. All right, guys, I guess it is time to start, and hopefully you have everyone. If you're joining us for the first time, just want to let you know that the video is being recorded, so it's going to stay right here on our YouTube, and it's not going anywhere, so you can watch it anytime. Or if you can't stay the entire event today, that's okay too. Oh, excuse me. All right, let's go through our supplies quickly. So you're going to need a piece of paper, so watercolor paper preferably if you have that. If you don't have that, just a thicker piece of paper will work, because otherwise it's going to go away pretty fast. So it needs to be thick, or specifically watercolor paper. We're going to use a pencil because we're going to start with the outline, and you're going to need the eraser, of course, just to help you out. We're going to use, I will be using this koi watercolor today, but any watercolor that you have, you're welcome to use. I have quite a few colors here, but if you only have, let's say, 6 color watercolor, it's not a problem. I'll tell you how to mix all of those colors. You can do it with way more basic watercolor than that. You don't need anything elaborate. And if all you have is acrylic, that's okay too. You can use watered down acrylic for this as well. And I'm going to be showing you colors on the sheet just because it's better, it's easier to see. And then I'll explain how to mix them in case you don't have anything pre-mixed. That's totally fine. And of course, you're going to need some water because this is watercolor. Watercolor requires water. So let's start. First thing we're going to do is we're going to sketch. Oh, and brushes. Sorry, guys. You're going to need a couple of brushes. If you only have one, not a problem for this particular painting. You can have just one, totally fine. Ideally, you want to have a couple different sizes. For example, I have large, medium. Also, I have number 12, number 6, and 0. Just to get different details, but probably more important is a smaller brush because there are quite a few small details if you were to choose one. All right, let's put them aside. And we're going to start with a sketch. So what I usually do is I start with a head, clearly. Now, just a word of a caution, don't make head too big because if you make head too big, you're going to run out of space for the body. So keep that in mind. So we'll start for the head, and you're just going to put an oval or a circle. Very, very plain, simple, nothing too crazy. Let's put this away. So somewhere around here. All right, now after this, I'm going to put 2 lines down for the neck. I'm going to define them later. This is just a base, and then 2 lines to the side, slightly tilted for shoulders. And again, this is just my base, so it looks like a bit stick figure-ish, and that's okay. That's perfectly normal. That's just the start. So just a straight line for now to position everything. You can put one line down if you want. This is more like for the spine to know that nothing gets too twisted. So Our Lady ends up being straight, right? So she doesn't end up tilted one way or the other. And we're going to erase that line later. Now, you can smoothen the edges between the neck and the shoulder. So right here. Right away, you can erase the lines that you don't want. Kind of want to give her a longer neck, so I'm going to bring the head a little bit higher up. All right. After that, shoulders. So we don't have the ends of shoulders, it's just lines right now. So we're going to add a little rounded edge to the sides as well. And after that, we're going to put 2 lines for the arms. So line straight and line straight. Line straight and line straight. And they end, I would say, about halfway through your paper. So do you see both hands, they end, this is about halfway through our paper, just so you know how far to go. So you have a general idea. And overall, we're not going to go too detailed on the hands. As you can see, they're not fully sketched. We're just going to add the wrist a little bit like that, right? So we have this part, so we're just going to add a little bit for the wrist. And that's pretty much it. So from here on the ends, I'm going to, again, add a curve and not a straight edge. I don't want to do sharp edges. So just curve and then line down. The same on the other side, curve and then line down. And then you can go back and whatever refining your lines need, you can refine them, if any. Doesn't mean you will need any, but just in case you do, you can go back and just do that now. All right, again, we'll refine everything once we have everything sketched too. So after that, we're going to move to the body. So I'm going to identify where those armpit sections are. And I would say they're somewhere around here. So just we'll put 2 dots for now. Then I'll bring slightly curved lines like that towards the waist. So here and here, curved towards the outside. And after, so right now they're like this, right? Sorry, guys, like this. We'll more even than that. Yeah, like this. Now we're going to add a curve towards the inside for the waist. All right, and now we're going to bring that into our beautiful skirt. So go as fluffy as you want and as far as you want with this. I might actually bring my waist a little bit higher up just to have a little more skirt. So it's all about refining. You start somewhere and then you see where you want to go from there. All right. That is a good base. Let's continue refining our dress. So now you can erase the middle line. We don't need it. We already have everything positioned mostly. Now we just need all the details. So now I'm going to add the straps. So I'm just going to extend those armpit lines a little bit higher up. And I'm going to bring this down. And if you want to do different design for the dress, you're welcome to. If you want to get fancy here and add a bow or a zipper or a lace or I don't know, anything you want to add, absolutely go for it. Be your own dress designer. After that, let's add the hair because she kind of looks weird with this bubble head right now. So let's fix that. And now we're going to refine the hair. So I'm going to erase the head pretty much fully. I still see somewhat my lines, right? They're not fully gone. They just get lighter. And I'm going to create more of an oval shape head now versus it being so circular in a way. And I'll bring the hair right here from the bottom up into the bun, and I'm going to add a bun, a big loose bun right here. So there is a little bit more movement than just bubble head. And of course, you can add a little curls coming out. So I'll add a little curl right here, maybe right here. Anywhere where you feel like she could have a bit of hair sticking out, that's all good. And in my case, she's going to have an earring. Again, feel free to experiment with your earring design. This is totally something you can just go wild on. I'm doing something very simple, so just large circular earrings. So full circle here and just such a tiny little touch sticking out on the other side. So that's enough for me, but again, see for yourself what kind of earrings you want your lady to have. And again, options with the dress, just want to give you options. You can do something like this at the back, right? Let me zoom in on that. If you wanted to, just giving you options. You can add a bow right here. If you ever wanted to be a designer, now is your time. You can just go wild. See, a lot of different options, and the top here is very plain, right? It's the skirt that has a lot of flowers. So if you want to make it a little more complicated or just up to your taste, please do. Don't be afraid of that. I'm going to keep mine plain just to stick to the original. But those are all good options. Alrighty. And now let's add the second half of the hands, because right now the hands are just sticks. They only have the outer side, right? They don't have the inner side. And she needs to have maybe not the full-on detailed inner side, but at least something. So what I'm going to do is right here, I'm just going to add the inner side. And notice how our hands are wider here, right? So keep that in mind. Just straight line, straight line. Again, nothing complicated. Elbow should be a little bit curved. It shouldn't be just a full-on angle, of course. And most important, just keep in mind that the arm should be wider here, and then it gradually gets thinner, and then it gradually gets thinner. And this should be the thinnest point. And then just another little flick down, imitating that there is a thumb going down. Let me show you on the other hand. Sorry, guys. Just have to figure out how to show this for camera, right? Because we have this line, I have this line going straight, then a little curve, this line going straight, and then this line, and just the line down to indicate this direction. And the same thing pretty much on the other side. Again, it's nothing too fancy. We're not going too detailed here, just so it doesn't look like it's just sticks. Great. We have 2 arms. And now I'm going to add the details. So I'm going to start sketching those fine details. I'm going to start with a head because why not? And I'm going to start with this flower right here. So let me show you how I'm generally going to do flowers. I'm going to show you somewhere around here. So very simple. You just start with the middle. Let's say the middle is a circle, or you just imagine that there is a circle in the middle. And then you wrap curved lines around it. And around and around and around you go. The bigger the rows, the more of those you're going to add. This is pretty much just our sketch for roses. So that's how we're going to sketch rose. I'm going to keep it here for now. I'm not going to erase it. I'll erase it later once we move to the actual painting. So I'm going to add something like that right here. I'm going to clear up the space for it first. And now I'm going to add it. And your rose sketch doesn't have to be super detailed. Those are mostly just the placeholders for you to know where that's going to go. The real work for our flowers is going to be done with our paint. So if your sketch is not perfect, it doesn't have to be. Now, another thing I want to do is I want to wrap the little branch around here and a little branch on the other side. So let me show you again on a separate piece how we're going to do branches. So let's say this is our rose right here. I'm going to make a small one. So branch, whether it's the big branch that's here or a small branch wrapped around there, it's always going to be like that. It's going to be a line first for the middle of your branch. And let's get closer here to you. Then I usually add the end leaf. And then one on this side, one on the other side. One on this side, one on the other side, and so on. And sometimes it's really nice to make them a little bigger as you go closer to the flower. So it's nice when the closest ones to the flower a touch bigger, and then they get a tad smaller as you go further. But again, I always start at the end and work my way down. I rarely start at the front and work my way to the back. The only reason why it's really hard to estimate how many of them you're going to need. And sometimes if you overestimate, then you end up with them too far or too much gap here. So that's why I like working this way. If you're really good at estimating spaces, it doesn't matter where you start, bottom or the top. And the leaf shape are pretty much like this. So they need to have a pointy 2 ends and this midsection to be a little bit chunkier. They don't have to be specifically symmetrical. It doesn't have to, your left and right don't have to be the same. They can have that curve. That's actually a nice look. So don't be afraid of that. So I'm going to add that to our hair. I'll add 2 branches. I'm going to put the main lines for my branches first. One this way and one this way. They're pretty small, but I'm going to clean up the head a little bit just so you can see them better. And with the watercolor, because we're going to try to avoid using white and just use white of our paper as a white, you need to have those parts sketched right away because they're going to be much lighter than the hair. So we have to reserve them. We cannot add hair first and then this light green over them. We have to always add the lightest color first and then go darker, 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 because you can't really add the lighter later, unless you decide to go with acrylic or mixed technique, in which case you can. All right, so I have 2 branches here. Also, guys, just to let you know, either I haven't seen anyone saying anything in chat or my chat is not working for some reason, because I haven't seen even one message so far from anyone. So I'm just letting you know that if you by any chance asking me something in chat and I'm not responding to you, it's not because I am ignoring you. I'm definitely not. My chat is completely empty. It has 0 messages right now. So yeah, just making sure. I'm actually going to pull up this video on my phone right now and log in as a user to see if there is chat going on that I am just missing.
As a small business owner and a mother, I know firsthand.
Oh yeah, sorry guys. See here, I can see the chat on my phone, but for some reason it doesn't show my laptop. It shows just an empty chat. So I'm gonna really do my best to try to check your questions or comments here and then respond to you. But again, if I miss something, I apologize in advance. All right, so yes, I hope you can hear me better, guys. I just caught up on all the messages. I hope you can hear me better. I don't know if something was wrong with sound before. On my end, everything looks the same. But again, the glitches happen on both platforms. We've done YouTube Lives many times, and we've done Facebook Live many times. And Facebook Live is actually a little more glitchy nowadays. So that's why we're going YouTube Live more often. So I apologize if there's something wrong. Everything looks fine on my end, so unfortunately I can't fix it, even if it is. So again, I apologize, and I really hope it resolves. And yeah, hopefully we all caught up. And guys, the video will stay up forever, so you can do this anytime. And also, what we recommend sometimes is that if you find that you would like to really take your time, or you're a perfectionist, and this is just more natural for you to take a certain amount of time per step, or you just don't like rushing, all good. Feel free to rewind. Even as we are live, you can just rewind video to the beginning or like a section prior and rewatch it. You don't have to rush through this. And once it's fully recorded, you will be able to actually pause it, which I know a lot of people find helpful. So just a heads up. All right, let's continue decorating our dress here. Now, I'm going to start with all those wonderful flowers at the bottom of our skirt. I'm actually going to make my skirt a little bigger, more like wider on the bottom, because I still have a bit of canvas, not canvas, paper available. So why not make it bigger, right? All right, so I'm going to start adding flowers. You can add as many flowers as you want. Totally. Don't limit yourself and don't count them. You don't have to have just the amount that my original painting had, as many as you want. I usually start working from the middle. I personally just, it's a preference. I like adding the middle flowers first and then working my way to the sides, but it doesn't matter. It's not because it's the right way and any other way is the wrong way. Whatever works for you. Just make sure some flowers overlap some other flowers. You want to have some flowers up front, some flowers behind. You also want to have variety, as much variety as possible. You want bigger flowers, you want smaller flowers. The same with the color. Once we get to the color, you want to have a variety of colors as well. And branches we're going to add after we position all our flowers. So flowers go first. And again, perfect sketch is not a requirement. The job is going to be done mostly with paint. This is just for us to know where to start and where to position our flowers. It's going to be a big one there. All right, guys, so here are all my flowers. I'll give you a couple of minutes to do this, so no rush. Don't feel like you have to be done right now as well. Take your time. I'll give you a couple of minutes, and then I'm going to move onto this wonderful branches. And I'll show you how to do branches. In the meantime, I'm just going to quickly check the comments on my phone. Sure, I can repeat how to draw a rose, no problem. So I showed you here. So basically you start from the middle. Usually put like a dot or something or a little circle in the middle, something. And then you wrap around this half circular in a way, maybe not even half, but somewhat circular lines. You just continue wrapping them. And again, this is just a sketch. When we move to our paint, it's going to look similar, but because we're using brush that is thicker than this, right? And the color, it's going to look different. It's going to be fuller. It's going to be more layered, especially because we're going to use a couple different layers on every rose. They're not going to be done with just one layer of paint. So this is just a sketch. This is just for us to know the direction of the brush strokes and how they're going to go. No problem. All right, guys, and now I'm going to add my branches. So What I'm gonna do here is I'm gonna position the biggest branch somewhere closer to the middle, and then a couple smaller ones on the sides, and also let a couple just separate leaves that don't have branches. So it's mix and match of all those. I'm gonna start with a branch. It's gonna come somewhere around here. It's not gonna be straight, it's gonna be slightly curved. So that's one branch. And then I'm gonna add two smaller ones on this side. So let's add one right here, and one right here. Now let's do just one on the other side. Great, and after that I'm gonna add a couple of separate flowers anywhere you want. Those are more like a space filler. So I'll add sorry, not flowers, leaves. I'll add a leaf here, a couple leaves there. Again, the objective is to have them different in sizes, so some bigger, some smaller. You don't want to have a copy paste leaf. You want to have a bit of a difference between them. All right, this is pretty much it for me. All my flowers and all my leaves, everything is on its place. So I'll give you guys again a couple more minutes to do all of that. That's no problem. In the meantime, I'm just gonna lighten up my lines for the lady because she doesn't need to be that dark. Those lines is actually best if they're very light because watercolor, you want it nice and light, right? You don't want to see your lines through very much. So I'm gonna lighten that up a bit. The same with the head. And I'm gonna erase all those background images. All right, guys, I'll give you 2 more minutes and then we're gonna move to the actual painting part. So to answer your question in chat, do you have to lighten it? No, I'm not unless you want to. If you like your lines more harsh, you can keep them. I personally like them as light as I can get them because otherwise I may potentially see the extra lines that I may want to get rid in the end. And once you put the watercolor on them, even transparent, like for example, if there was line underneath here, do you see how super transparent it is? This line would still be visible and I would not be able to erase it because once you have some paint over it, you just can't erase it. So that's why I prefer to make my lines as light as I can at first. And then as I go further, I will just darken up what I want to darken up with either a Sharpie or a fine brush. For this particular, I did not use Sharpie, I just used a fine brush, but that's actually another thing, guys. If you prefer using maybe a fine tip Sharpie or a Sharpie for black lines, you absolutely can. Totally fine, will still look really great. You're welcome. All right. So I guess it's time for us to start painting. So I'm going to put my pencil aside. Don't need it anymore. And I'm going to grab my water. I'm going to grab my palette. Oh, eraser. Let's put eraser away too. And I'm going to grab my paint. And what I'm going to start with is I'm going to start with a skin tone. So in my case, the skin tone is extremely light. It's a very peachy / coral skin tone. Very, very light. Not because she's a fair skin lady, but also mostly not because of that. You can give, she can be black. You're just going to need to have a different skin tone, but you're not going to fill the entire body regardless of a skin tone. And the reason why is whatever skin tone you decide to go with, you're just going to add a little shading of that color. And you can use absolutely any color because skin tones come in such a variety of colors. So just don't fill in the entire thing because we want her to be lighter than a background regardless of a skin tone. So majority of her body is pure white paper. And then you just add a touch of skin tone, whatever that may be. And I'll show you a technique of how to edit so it looks, so you can still read the skin tone, but it looks extremely light. It doesn't overpower the entire body because then our dress is not going to pop as much. However, if you decide to, for example, to go with dark skin tone and fill in the entire body, and that's your preference, that's okay. In that case, make sure you go much lighter. Choose any lighter color for this part of the dress so it pops over the skin tone. So that's the only thing. Keep that in mind. All right, so I'm going to do that peachy coral color. How you do it is super easy. You take any of your pinks, whatever that may be, and any of your yellows, and you mix them up a little bit. So for me, let's take some yellow first. Any yellow will do. And then grab any pink that you have. Add it in. In my case, I'm going to do more pink, less yellow. And you see, this is like a very coral color. So I'm going to water that down really well. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go right here. I'm going to add a line. And right away, I'll wash off my brush. I will dab it off on my paper towel. Here's my paper towel. And then with a clean wet brush before my paint dries, I'm going to spread it a little. So it creates more like a gradient in a way there. So you don't have to fill the entire body. This is more than enough. I'll add one more line along the spine. Again, you have to blend it right away. That's super, super important. Alternatively, what you could do, if this is not working out for you as a technique, you can actually color in this entire section with just water. So whichever section you're gonna blend it in, you can just water it and then add paint where you want the majority of it to be visible, and it will spread by itself. So that's another option. I personally can like it more controlled like this. I prefer adding it by myself where I want it to go and then spreading it versus letting it spread by itself by using pre-watered section. But both of them are good options to do it. It's just in this case, you have to, like, you can't wait. You can't take even 2-minute break because your watercolor will absorb into your paper really fast. So you have to do this like right away. With more like a really great quality watercolor paper, sometimes it will stay for a while, but with more of a lower quality, for example, this one is not a good quality watercolor paper. It's, I don't remember where I bought it, Walmart or dollar store somewhere. So it's not like a professional grade watercolor paper. This is very average. So that's why it absorbs fast, even though it still is paper made specifically for watercolor. It absorbs pretty fast in comparison to a very expensive professional watercolor paper, which will hold the paint without absorbing it for quite some time. In which case it allows you to manipulate it for longer before it's absorbed. But in my case, I have to use water right away, almost the same second. And otherwise, I'm not going to be able to do that at all. So, okay, to answer your questions, I just checked the comments to see if you guys had any questions. If you wanted to do this as a wedding dress, that's a great question. So what I would do is I would go darker on the skin tone, 100%, and then keep this completely white. You can add a little bit of shading, for example, closer to the edges of the dress to give it a shape, right? To shape that waist and everything else. So you're going to be shaping it that way, but keep it, you basically going to be doing this reversed. Right now here we're keeping the silhouette light and the dress dark. You're going to be doing it reversed. You're going to be keeping silhouette dark, and background you can do darker around here as well. So everything that's around dress, that touch the dress, if you're doing white wedding dress, you're going to do dark. So for example, here you see I went darker background around the silhouette because my silhouette is light, and next to no background or very light background around the dress because dress is dark. So you're going to be doing reverse. You're going to be doing a more dominant color for skin tone. Again, any skin tone, you can just use more pigment and color it in more fully. The same with a background around the dress. You're going to be really going heavy on a background around the dress. And you can still incorporate somewhat of colors on the bottom of your dress. It's mostly the top that you have to keep light. And you can shade it a little bit on the edges. I hope that answers your question. And for those of you who are wondering how to make acrylic look like watercolor, water it down. Just really, really water it down. And don't water it down on your brush. Always put a touch of acrylic on your palette and use a ton of water. And only use your watered down acrylic when it looks like a dirty water. That's the consistency it needs to be. Like, for example, look at this. This doesn't even look like pigment. It looks like a dirty water. That's pink water. That's how watered down your acrylic needs to be. It needs to be a dirty water of a certain color. That's when you want to use it. Always, always, always pre-mix it, pre-water it on a palette. And again, I hope that answers your question as well. All right, guys, moving forward. So we can go either on a background or in a dress here. What I want to do is I want to start with the roses, because I find that this is one of the parts that's, again, because of technique of working with watercolor, you have to do all the light parts first and only then the dark parts. In my case, my roses and my leaves are pretty light, so we're going to move to that next. And I'm going to start with my roses. You are welcome to use a large variety of colors. Any oranges, any reds, any pinks, purple, yes, as well. I'm going to be using purple. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with just a two, three shades. So choose like a neutral pink. It could be a bit colder side like this one. It could be a bit warmer like this one. Again, we're not going to go as saturated for the first layer. So you're going to go about half intensity of that, because the second layer that's where we go super saturated. Like, let me show you here on this. You see, this is the first layer. 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 This is second layer. This is second layer. The more intense spots are the second layer. So that's why we're going to go with lighter and darker. So they're not one-tone flowers. So let's do that. So I'm going to mix the color that I'm going to start with. I'm going to use a couple different shades for starters. I'm going to use this one, which is just my pink, like a colder pink. And I'm going to make a warmer pink. If you only have one pink, to make it warmer, you can mix it with a little bit of yellow or orange just to give it a little warmth, which is what I'm doing here. I'm mixing in a little bit of yellow, and you see it turns into more like peachy corally color, which is great for the first layer on some of the flowers. And I'm going to use cold pink as well. So with this, doesn't really matter which one you start with here. Oh, and guys, and let's add some yellow in the mix right away for our middle. So I'm going to put my yellow right here. And I'm going to be switching between these three colors as I go. So here's my paper towel. All right, let's move everything a little bit to the side so you can see it all. Great. Doesn't matter which one you start. Let's start with that one. You color it in a similar motion that we started doing our flowers in. Now, if you want to do full coverage, that's fine. You can color it so you don't see anything at all. You don't see any little gaps in between. Or here, for example, I did have little gaps. So if you see a little bit of white canvas in between those brush strokes, that's okay too. It's not a bad thing. And you see, I added second color right away. I just took a little bit of yellow and brushed it in mostly towards the middle, but also a little bit on the ends, just so it's not one color. Let's move to the other one. I'll do this 1 second. Again, I'll use the same color for the base. And right away, I'll add a little bit of this one. So again, so they're not all the same, so they have a bit of color differences. Great. Next one, let's use this shade color. This little flower, I'll use this shade color. And I'll dip in some yellow in the middles of each of them. And I'm just going to continue going down in the same technique using different colors. So you can mix more than that. This is a good start of 2. As many as you want. You can use all of the colors that you have. Again, roses come in so many different colors, so don't be afraid to use more than that. I'm gonna grab a couple of different colors. So this is like a cherry red. So if you don't have cherry red, that's just a very dark saturated red, which you can add a tiny touch of brown or black to like bring it down. But if you don't have to, you can just use whichever red you have. You can use straight orange. So let's do that too. Let's use this orange color. I would even grab some purple. If you don't have purple, that's blue and red or pink, whatever you have. preferably pink if you have pink. Just mix them up and it should give you about the same color. And we'll continue going. We'll go to next flower. And I'll use a couple different colors from my palette. And again, I'm continuously using a decent amount of water, as you noticed. So next one, I'm actually going to start with yellow. All right, that's pretty much all my flowers, at least the first layer of all my flowers. Oh, awesome, I'm glad. I'm glad my explanation helped. And then guys, pretty much right away, we can go on to second layer on our flowers. There is absolutely no need to wait. Even if they're a little bit wet, it doesn't make it worse, as long as they're not fully wet, in which case you should probably wait a second. But if they're a little bit wet, it's not a problem at all. You can continue going right into second layer. So second layer, the only difference is you're going to use way more saturated colors. So this time, still, you're going to use a fair bit of water. Doesn't mean you're going to use just pigment, no water. Just this time, you're going to make the water very saturated. So this is the intensity of the color that I'm going to be using. on this layer. Do you see? It's quite different than the intensity of the color that I used on my first layer. And I'm not going to be using yellow. So yellow was only a first layer color. This is more saturated. So this is a variety of colors that I'm going to be using. I have two different shades of pink, colder pink, warmer pink. Again, if you only have one pink, it's going to be more like this one, for example. If it's more like warmer pink, then to make colder pink, you can just mix it with a touch of purple and it will give you just the right color for this colder pink. If it's the other way around for you and you actually have this color, like a magenta pink, and you don't have this warmer pink to make this warmer pink, just add a tiniest touch of either orange or yellow to this color, just a very small touch should give you that. This is a cherry red, so it's like a pinker red on a darker side. So if you all you have is like a fire truck red, for example, you can mix that with a touch of pink and a tiny touch of black, just like a smidge of black. It should bring you somewhere around here. Again, all pigment reacts different, so depending on a brand, it may vary, but this is just general idea. And this is orange. So I'm gonna go second layer. And second layer, I'm gonna add a bit less of it. So let me show you. Let's start, let's say with this color, for example. I'm gonna add second layer on this flower. I'm gonna zoom in a bit here too. So do you see, I'm not covering the entire area anymore. I'm more selective about my brush strokes. It's still, I'm doing them pretty much like I've done the sketch. Nothing changed. It's the same motion. Are you allowed to use multiple colors on a second layer? Absolutely. Don't limit yourself to just one. So for example, here, I'll start with this pink and then I'll switch to my purple. So yes, I'll overlap my pink and the rest I'll just do with my purple. And you see, this is a 2-color second layer. So it's up to you how many colors you're going to use on a second layer. Just one is more than enough, but 2 is great as well. Either is fine. It is your choice, guys. Can you notch that? Your roses may look a little messy, and that's okay. Again, we're just taking them out of context right now. There's just them. We don't have anything else going on. Once we have actual everything else, like a dress and a background, and we add dark of this black outlines around, it will all really come together. So don't look at them as just a separate piece. All right, so that's my second layer on my roses. And I'm gonna add the rose on our head as well. I think it's time for that one. I'll do just one layer because it's very small. If you want to do 2 layers, you can. And then I'm going to quickly go and wash my palette because my palette is pretty much all taken. There are only a couple spots left. And I need a little bit more than that, I think. All right, and now I'm gonna move to my leaves. So for the leaves, they're much simpler. It's just one color. Choose any color that you want, but it has to be on a lighter side. So this is good, that is good. I'm gonna be using this one, but watered down. So it's like light like that, for example, because this is just a little dimmer than that. So this is just pretty average green, really. It's on a yellower side. So if the only green you have is, let's say, this one, then you have to mix it with yellow to get to that, and then just water it down. That's all it is. But again, if you would rather have more of a minty or cold green, something like that, you're allowed. You're welcome to add that. In my case, I'm using warmer green, so it's a bit more contrast with the dark blue navy of the dress. So that's why I'm using that color. But any other light green will work as well. You don't have to use that particular one. I'll start at the top. I'll color in this little leaves right here. Now for fine details, of course, you're going to need to use a little bit less water because it's hard to do fine details if you use a ton of water. But still, enough water for it to be nice and light and transparent. Because after all, it is watercolor, or watercolor technique if you're using acrylic. And of course, you're welcome to make some leaves lighter, some leaves darker. They don't have to be just one uniform color. All right, and the branches appeared. Don't they look good? I think they look great. And after this, I can actually move to the dress. So for the dress, I'm only going to be using one color, and that one color is going to be this one. So this is like a dark navy blue. If you don't have that, because this is not a very standard color for a simpler watercolor palette. Like for example, I have a Crayola 6-color or 12-color watercolor. It doesn't have that one. Still, I actually love Crayola watercolor. I think it's pretty good quality. So it doesn't have that one. So if you want to, what you could do, either A, you replace it and instead you use just more of a standard dark blue that comes with every watercolor, or you mix your standard dark blue with a tiniest smidge of black and it will bring you right here. And that's all this paint is. It's like a dark blue with a smidge of black. Just don't overdo it with black, because if you overdo it with black, it's going to turn gray. It's going to lose that blueness of it. And you don't want a gray dress, unless you want a gray dress, in which case it's fine. But if you want a blue dress, always, if you don't have this premix, stay on the side of caution. Use mostly just a dark blue, standard dark blue that you have. And if you find it a little too bright or not the color that you like, add a touch of black to it, just a very small touch. Another little pointer, if your blue is on a warmer side, if all you have is this is like an ultramarine blue. It has like a hint of purple to it. Again, that's not the color I was using. You're welcome to use it. It's a wonderful color. Will still look really great. There is nothing wrong with it. Absolutely nothing. But if you want to bring it to this particular color that I used, you're going to need to add a little bit of dark green. So something like that. And a touch of black to that, because this color is on a greener side as well. It has this like green cold undertone. So again, I hope this makes sense, and try the colors that you have and see whether you like them or not, and then you can adjust them accordingly. But I'm going to be using just that one. And I'm going to switch my brush. So I was using the smallest brush. I was using 0 to now, and I'm going to switch to my number 6 here. And I'm going to put this paint on my palette. You see, it almost looks like black. It's dark blue. And I'm going to start quite watered down again. I'm not going to start as saturated, because there are certain areas, you see, they're light. Not all of it is dark. And we're going to build that intensity in layers. So I'm going to start with pretty watered down paint. You see, it's not crazy dark. I'm going to color in this section here. I'll continue bringing brush strokes down. Some of it you can overlap the roses a little bit. Do you see, just like a touch, right? And notice how I'm holding my brush. I'm pushing my brush, using my brush more wide as I'm going up to make my brush strokes wider. And as I'm going down, I'm starting to use just the tip of my brush to make the finer line. So it's interesting technique as well. It's really using a brush more on angle versus more just the tip. Ideally, you want to start avoiding your, like if you go a little bit over your leaves here and there, it's not a big deal, but because we're still using a fairly light color, we're using it more watered down. But again, ideally, you want to avoid them. All right, that's a good start, right? But I'm still gonna go to the bottom here. I'll let a little bit of that watered down color to see it goes underneath the flowers too. It's gonna be a little bit more abstract there. That's strange. Yeah, I'm sorry you couldn't hear me for a while. As I mentioned earlier, it does happen sometimes that YouTube and Facebook, they go a little bit glitchy from time to time. So sorry, I can't explain this. So I'm glad it's back to normal and you can hear me fine now. So guys, now I'm gonna move to my second layer, and that's where I'm gonna start using darker color, but not the darkest. I'm actually gonna have 3 layers here. Third one is gonna be like super dark. So this one is gonna be visibly darker, of course. And we're not trying to color everything with it. We're just more like adding brushstroke here and there. And darkening mostly the areas that's supposed to be really dark. So you're not going to be adding it to everything. Notice certain areas I'm keeping quite transparent, right? The majority of darkness is going to be closer to the middle of my dress here. And with this darkness, I'm going to get a little bit onto my roses to maybe define them just a little bit more onto the outside. So I'm going to use that to shape them a little. And see in certain areas, because the watercolor dries fast, I have time to blend it into the background. And in certain areas I don't, and that's okay. If it looks like literally like outline of a branch, that's okay. You're not going to be able to have time to blend in everything because it's a lot of fine detail outlining here. And as you know, watercolor is kind of fast working medium. And I will add a bit of that second layer, darker color, onto the bottom too. All right, that is 2 layers. And final layer, third one. So now I'm gonna take a super saturated color. So super saturated, and I'm only adding a little bit of it on the third layer. So on the waist, around the waist right here, you see it almost looks like black just because of how dark it is. And I'll add some in the middle, so right here too, around the flowers, and just bring it a little bit up. I'll add it around some of the branches, but I'm not going to be blending it, so I'm going to leave it just like an outline around the branch. And you can use smaller brush for that if you prefer. And I'll add a bit of, again, outlines to my flowers. And last thing I'm going to do with this color is, actually, I'm not going to do it yet. I'm going to do background first, and then I'm going to do that splatter right here. So I'll still do that with this color, just not yet. Okay, and let me see if you guys have any comments, questions, concerns. No worries, it happens. Could be a phone, could be the YouTube, you just never know. Or at least I just never know. All right, guys, and now I'm gonna move to my background here. So I'm gonna use even bigger brush. So I'm gonna retire my number 6 and I'm gonna move to my number 12. So I'm gonna take my number 12 and here you're welcome to use any colors that you used for your flowers. So something that you already have here. In my case, I'm gonna use some orange, I'm gonna use some pinks. That's pretty much it. So, and again, as I mentioned earlier, we're gonna try to make it more watered down further into background and a little more saturated closer to our silhouette, only because our silhouette is so light. So to create that contrast. And you don't have to go too far or too dark around your actual dress, except the only places where I'm gonna be going around my dress is mostly around the flowers, just to tie my flowers, bleed them into the background a little bit. So I'm going to start with this pink right here, just like a standard pink. It's nothing special kind of color. So and then I'll take more water and I'll just blend it into the background with a straight water. It doesn't have to be perfectly blended. If it's a little chunky here, this is actually good. You can just add that specifically manually. You can splatter a little. Like all that is a great texture. And you can use any brush that's comfortable for you, or you can use a couple different brushes. If let's say one brush is easier for the large chunks of a background and one brush is easier for the smaller areas here, you can switch between the brushes back and forth as many times as needed. So don't limit yourself to just one brush. All right, so that was good. One color. I might add another color. Let's add a little bit of like light orange. If you don't have that color, you can just mix some yellow with the standard orange that you have. You see, it's just a little lighter than standard orange. But yeah, any orange mixed with yellow should give you this color. If you don't have it, or you can even use straight yellow, or you can use straight orange, whatever works. Just a little, something a little warmer here. And I will add that a little bit right here too. Sorry guys, I keep sneezing today for some reason. Maybe a little on the other side. We'll do a mixture on the other side. Oh yeah, that's a good match. Do you see it bleeds that flower? So whatever you use there, you can just use the same color. Just like a little bit in a messy way. Might add a bit more pink. Look around here to make it a little darker. And let's add a bit of pink here too. All right, I'm happy with my amount of pink. I don't really want to be adding any more. If you want, you can add more. I'm good with this. Now I can add this dark blue splatter right here. I can actually start by dabbing a little bit of it first. Want some splattering. All right, I'm happy with this. Now that needs to dry because it's super, super wet. Another thing you could do with your pink is you can put a little line close to the spine right here, just like that. It's not crazy important, but you could. And the rest we're just gonna do with the black. And oh, sorry guys, we're missing one thing before we do black and a small brush is we're gonna need to add our earrings. I didn't add the actual solid color for our earrings, so I'm just gonna take pink and I'll do my earrings pretty solid and dark pink. You can use any color that you want. It doesn't have to be specifically pink. And also I'm gonna do a bracelet that's gonna be dark pink as well. So again, you don't have to do that if you don't want to. All the accessories are up to you how you're gonna do them and what they're gonna look like. Great. And after I can move to my black. But I'm gonna give it a second to dry up, just a second, because it's a little too wet and black. You don't want it to bleed into anything. It has to be more of a fine lines. And that's why I was telling you guys, if you want to, you can use fine tip Sharpie. Fine tip Sharpies are awesome for this. The only thing with fine tip Sharpies, A, they have to be water resistant. B, you have to wait until your painting is fully dry because it will bleed. It will either A, bleed if it's not water resistant, if it has some wetness on your painting, or it's just not going to go over the wet areas if it's water resistant. So just make sure you wait until it's dry before you use black. And just your question, is there a traceable? No, there is not, but the sketch is super simple. So I believe in you guys. You can do this. If you're just joining us now, feel free to rewind to the beginning. We start at the beginning with the sketch, with a pencil and eraser. So take your time on doing the sketch, no rush. And when you get it right, then you can start painting. But yeah, it's super, super simple. So yeah, you don't really need traceable for this particular painting. We do always provide traceable for a very complicated artworks or very time-consuming sketches. This one is neither. It is fun, it's educational, hopefully you will learn a thing or two by sketching it, but it is also very doable. Actually, I want to fix a thing here. All right, now I'm going to move to black. So again, I'm going to be using paint. I'm going to be using my small brush, the smallest brush that I have, and straight black paint. I'm not going to be using that much water this time. You still have to use enough water for it to go over and in a nice fine lines, but not as much water as we use for the background, for example, or for the flowers. And I'm going to start with, let's start with the head. And I'll start with, I'll add the middle to this flower, so just like a little dabs. You can add a couple outline colors there, outline lines. Then I will add a couple hollow leaves right here. You see they're super fine. I'm actually going to zoom in for that so it's easier for you guys to see. because those are pretty fine details. And then I'm going to move to the hair. So this is where I'm going to use a little bit more water. And I'm going to just add lines like this in a circular motion to this messy bun. If you go a little bit over your branch lines, that's okay, but try to avoid them if you can. And the same on the bottom. So on this side, I'm actually going to color everything in around this branch. And here, I'm going to flick some lines up. So I'm going to keep some areas uncolored. And I will add those curly hair coming out. All right, the hair is done. So now I'm going to go down and I'm just going to add a flick here and there around the outline. I'm not adding a full-on outline. So I'll add a little flick here, flick here. Again, make sure your background is dry. If it's not dry, it's going to leak. And it's going to turn everything into gray, which is not ideal. So just a flick here and there to shape the hand a little better. Right then, the dress. And I'm just going to add a couple standalone lines. So just like a couple small lines on the sides. Do you see? You can outline some branches or some leaves, and you can add hollow leaves. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to add a couple hollow leaves here. I'll outline some of the existing leaves, just a few. You don't have to outline everything. For example, I'll outline the beginning of this branch. I'm not going to outline the entire branch. I can outline this leaves too. And I can add a couple hollow leaves. The same with the other side. I'll outline some of the leaves and I'll add some hollow leaves. Right, let's go on the bottom, same thing. Outline some of the leaves and add some hollow leaves. And then we'll move to roses. And with roses, I'm going to add some outline to some of them, not to every single one. And I'm going to add middle. So like a couple of dabs in the middle. So it's going to look like that, just a couple of dabs. And if some of them require that linear outline like we did with pencil, you can do that. And there are two options how you can do it. You can do it either just on the outer side, just like a little bit in, a couple layers in, but not all the way, or you can literally do it all the way. I would say don't commit to either. Just start, try, let's say one rose this way, one rose another way, and then see which one you like more. I'm doing majority just like from the outside, and I'm bringing it a little bit inside, but not too far. And after that, the last thing we have to do is sign, and that is pretty much it, guys. So I'm gonna sign it. Doesn't really matter where you sign it. I'll sign it right here. And ta-da, that is finished. I'm gonna take all the questions that you may have, and I'll be happy to answer them for you. Yes, you're very welcome. And guys, please share your results with us. I'm gonna send you a link right now. I'm gonna post it in chat if I can. Actually, I don't think I can. For some reason, it's the weirdest thing ever. I don't know why. This happened to me once before. It was the same glitch long time ago, that I couldn't see chat or post in chat. I don't know why it happened like that, but it's okay. I can post that link from my phone, I guess. I'm gonna post the link for you guys where you can post your paintings. We have a group on Facebook. It's called Watercolor Lovers by Artist Palette Durham Region. It's just like a peer support group where everyone who's into watercolors can get feedback and tips and tricks. One of our artists, Chris, she posts weekly Watercolor Wednesday, small little free tutorials just to help you grow in your watercolor technique. So I would greatly encourage you guys to post there, to share your results there with us. But if you'd rather not, that's okay. No pressure at all. Yeah, but I do want to send you a link to that, just in case you would like to do that. So it might take me a second because I'll have to send it to my phone first now. All right. Yes, I was able to post it from my phone. So I posted a link to this group. If you want to post your results there, would love to see them. If you would rather post them just on our Facebook page, you can do that too. You can just post them under any comment or on a particular event page created for this event, whatever works for you guys. And if you had fun and you want to say thank you by tipping me, I would never say no to that. It's not an obligation at all. But if that's your way of saying thank you, I will gladly accept that. And you can do that through PayPal. And I'll send you a link. So it's super simple. You just click on that link. It will bring you right where you need to go. And again, I'll have to post that through my phone. So let me quickly send that to myself first. Okay, to answer your question, how do you control the watercolor? It's a tricky medium. Mostly, you just have to use the right amount of paint of water for the area that you're using. If you're covering a small area, use less water. If you're covering a large area, you use more water, plus appropriate brush. So again, if you're using smaller area, smaller brush. If you're using larger area, larger brush. Technically, you could just get away with using one brush. Doesn't matter small or big, as long as it has a pointy tip. Do you see how this brush has a needle-like pointy tip? Really, really pointy. That's what you want your watercolor brush to look like. This is ideal watercolor brush. It has the super pointy tip, because with this brush, you can do wide areas, you can do large areas, but you can also do a very fine areas if you use just the very tip. And the amount of water that you use will determine how far it's going to spread. So for example, when I color the leaves, I have to use minimum amount of water. Again, still watered down or really watered down paint, not a lot of paint and a little bit of water. A little bit of that mixture. You always have to make that mixture first of really watered down paint, and based on the size of the area that you want to cover, then you take the amount of that mixture. If you want a small area, small amount of that mixture. If you want large area, as much as you can. Yeah, watercolor is a hard to control medium. It lives its own life. But yeah, the more you do it, the more you get accustomed to how to control it, how to use it, how to manipulate it. It all really comes with practice. You'll develop a muscle memory, and it will just get easier and easier every time you do this, guys. All right, guys, I hope this helps. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope to see you again. Bye, everyone.